Happy New Year. I hope you have a wonderful 2024. And to start out 2024, I want to talk about a new topic that I don't think I've ever covered. We're going to talk about the top 3 varmint cartridges. Hope you enjoy the video. Now, before I get to my top 3, we are going to open up the Hornady Reloading book. We're going to look at some honorable mentions. There's a lot of good ones that aren't going to make the top 3. So let's get into the honorable mentions. In front of me is the very versatile 243 Winchester. This cartridge is probably the most versatile one that I'm going to mention in this video. It shoots 55 grain bullets all the way up to 100 grain bullets with a 1 in 10 twist. If you get a faster twist, it could probably shoot 115 grain bullets. It's a great varmint and deer size, antelope size cartridge. So why is it not making top 3? Well, I think purely as a varmint cartridge, I think there are some that are just better with higher BC bullets in that 50-ish grain category that are going to have less recoil. Basically, I'm not sure you really need the power of a 243 for varmint, but it sure is a darn good one. Honorable mention number 2. We have the 6mm ARC. This is, of course, in an AR. You can also get it in a bolt action gun. I'm not sure which one would be preferred because in a gas gun, it'd just be a lot of fun. Put bullets downrange pretty quickly, but you're going to get better performance in a bolt action rifle. The 6mm ARC is going to have less recoil than a 243 Winchester, and it's shooting the exact same bullets. But on the other hand, you're not going to get as good a performance as a 243 Winchester as a varmint cartridge. A 58 grain in an AR is going to be going 3,300 feet per second, which is not terrible, but let's just switch over to the bolt gun data. You're getting 3,600 feet per second, so 300 more feet per second in velocity. I think the 6mm ARC, it's really new, but it could be a very, very good varmint cartridge. I think the reason it's not a top 3 is because, as well, it's brand new. There's not a lot of ammo for it, not a lot of reloading brass for it. So for now, it's going to be an honorable mention. The final honorary mention is going to be not the 6mm ARC, but the brand new 22 ARC. I think in, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years, the 22 ARC could be dominant, or it could be dead. It really depends how well the market takes it. But the 22 ARC could be the ultimate varmint cartridge. You can shoot it in an AR, you can shoot it in a bolt gun, and you're basically going to have similar performance to the 6mm ARC with higher BC bullets and the same weight. So it could be really good if it takes off. I'm not sure if it will, but Hornady has a pretty good track record of getting cartridges to become very successful. We'll just see. So just imagine like a 68 grain going almost 3,500 feet per second with a bit higher BC than what this 6mm can do. Yeah, it's a good deadly combination for varmint. This is it. We're now to top 3. No more honorable mentions. Gracing us in our number 3 spot is a cartridge that was introduced in 2004, a cartridge that was to compete with the 22-250 Remington and the 220 Swift. This cartridge is probably one of my favorite Hornady/Ruger cartridges. It's the 204 Ruger. Now, the 204 Ruger, its parent case is the 222 Remington Magnum, and it's neck down to 20 caliber. It's probably one of the few successful 20 caliber cartridges out there. It is very similar to a 223 Remington with a little bit more powder capacity and a little more oomph. And this cartridge is pretty cool because you're shooting really small bullets over 4,000 feet per second. The great attributes about the 204 Ruger, now this is coming from Hornady and they made the cartridge, so take it with a grain of salt, but they are saying varminters had been yearning for ever flatter trajectories with less recoil for decades. So it's kind of the really awesome thing about the 204 Ruger is it's just as fast as a 22-250 Remington, but with even less recoil. So what kind of grain of bullets are we shooting in the 204 Ruger? Well, 24 grain, 32 grain, 24 at 4,500 feet per second, a 32 at 4,200, a 40 grain at almost 3,900. It's fast and extremely flat shooting, very similar to a 22-250 Remington with just less recoil. So what are the downsides of the 204 Ruger? Why is this not the #1 cartridge? And arguably, why is it even in the top 3? Well, availability isn't going to be near as good as the ones above it, like ammo availability, rifles it's made in, and there's definitely a strong argument that this might not be enough for coyotes out 300-400 yards, and there is definitely a point to that. I think this really excels for smaller than coyotes, but is doable depending on range. At number 2 is the 22-250 Remington. When you think of a Varmint cartridge, I think this is the cartridge that comes to mind. So why isn't it number 1? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but is definitely you're in the mix for the best or second best Varmint cartridge. The 22-250 is just an extremely awesome case. It is basically a neck down 253,000 Savage, and it's giving you blistering velocities with extremely flat trajectory, and the recoil is extremely mild. It's even less than a 243 Winchester, because this case is technically smaller than a 243. And what kind of velocities are we looking at? I think a really good varmint bullet is the 35 grain at 4,400 feet per second, a 40 grain at 4,100. And then you get up to bigger bullets, it's still going really fast, a 50 grain at 3,800. Let's just look at what like maybe the 223 shoots, and a 55 grain, it's 3,700 feet per second. I don't know. As I said, when I think of varmint cartridge, this is what comes to mind. And the #1 varmint cartridge is the 223 Remington. How could it not be? This cartridge is literally the most popular cartridge probably in the world. Definitely is in America, in North America. It is extremely versatile as a varmint cartridge. Especially if you get more modern rifles and get faster twists, you can shoot up to 80 grain bullets or bigger. And it's all going relatively quickly. So because this cartridge is just so available in every rifle and you can get ammo wherever you go, it had to be #1. But let's go ahead and look at the performance. Let's now see how they compare in trajectory and foot-pounds and velocity. In front of me is the 204 Ruger. For fun, I brought this 223 Remington. And as I said previously, the 204 Ruger is a little bit bigger. As you can see, should get a bit more velocity. We're going to use a 32 grain VMAX at 4,200 feet per second. The energy, 1,254 foot-pounds. Now, why do we care about the energy? Yeah, it doesn't really matter for like woodchucks or prairie dogs, but what if you wanted to go coyote hunting and you had stuff out at 300 yards? So at 300 yards, the bullet's going 2,667 feet per second. Only 5.97 inches a drop when sighted in at 100. 506 foot-pounds. Now let's see how the 223 does with a 40 grain VMAX. At a muzzle velocity of 3,800 feet per second, your energy is just a tad bit more than a 204 Ruger, 1,283. At 300 yards, though, the bullet's going a bit slower than the 204 Ruger, and you have quite the difference in drop when you're comparing varmint cartridges. 2.5 inches difference, and then really close in energy, 480 foot-pounds. So, if I was going to hunt coyote with a 223, I'd probably pick a 55 grain bullet. Finally, the 22-250 Remington, we're going to use the same bullet as in the 223, 40 grain VMAX, muzzle velocity of 4,100 feet per second, so a 300 feet per second advantage. Muzzle energy is the most at almost 1,500 foot-pounds. Reminder, the other ones are around 1,200 foot-pounds. However, at 300 yards, the bullet's still not going as fast as the 204 Ruger, about 100 feet per second less. And it's within an inch of the 204 Ruger. 204 was 5.97. This is 6.62 inches of drop. And this, of course, has the most energy by about 60 foot-pounds. So, as I said, why I picked a 223 Remington? Well, you're going to have less recoil, a whole lot more ammo availability, and a whole lot more rifles for about 100 foot-pound difference and 2 inches of drop at 300.